Hello and welcome to 100 Yards of Football, Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and joining me is the host with the most, Mr. Football himself, Vincent Turner. How's it going, Vincent?
How you doing on this glorious morning?
I'm doing great. And also joining me is the host with the most, a man who's the hardest working sportscaster in the game, and I can prove it. This guy has been doing a lot of great things. He's not only working full-time, making sure that our broadcasts are running really smoothly, making sure our socials are running really smoothly, getting everything over to our podcast that's hosted by the Believe Podcast Network, and doing guest spots not only on other shows, and with some great sportscasters from around the country, but also bringing some of those great sportscasters over to our show and handling the immense amount of work it actually takes to put that together. It is not a simple job, and it takes a lot of coordination. It takes getting schedules right. It takes getting all the cadences right so that you know what you're talking about. It takes a lot of work, and that man himself is the man we've been bringing in every Monday for months upon end now, and he's just killing it. You can look at our numbers to prove it. Mr. Logan Landers. How's it going, Mr. Landers?
First off, Jeremiah, let me just say thanks for that amazing introduction. I know you probably need to get some water now after all those accolades and the accomplishments you just listed there. But I'm doing great, man. It's a brisk Monday here in October. Got Halloween coming up. Going to probably go to Walmart a little bit, get some candy. Enjoy the holidays and watch some football.
Absolutely. And I would just like to shout out to everybody that's already voted and give you guys one more reminder that it is super crucial in this election that you do go vote. It's early voting here in Georgia until Friday. I was just talking off air with my two compatriots here to make sure everybody gets out and does their early voting, because actually going to vote on Election Day is going to be really challenging this year. It's going to be a lot of things going on. So I encourage you, if you are going to vote in this election, whoever you're going to vote for, go out and vote and exercise your right to vote. You only get to try it every 4 years. You might as well go do it this week. So that being said, we are bringing in the Georgia Bulldogs versus the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, both of these teams have seen some interesting things in their season. Kentucky had I would call it an upset win against Tennessee. Some people, if you actually looked at the game, you would say that Kentucky just came on the field and they just did their job. And you can't compare it to season over season in that regard. And I would say maybe they're right. This is a team that did not face, Tennessee 17 years ago. These kids were in middle school 17 years ago, if that. So this is a fresh team. Give them the accolades for the work that they've done, and they've been coming and trying to compete. Also for the Georgia Bulldogs, even coming off a loss from Alabama, which was excruciating, just to be honest. Like, it was not something that you want to see. You want to see Georgia actually go toe-to-toe with the big dogs and bring it all the way in, which they did for the most part, but they still didn't quite squeak it out. So coming off of those two dynamics, we're going to see what's happening with the Georgia Bulldogs and the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, I'm going to bring in Mr. Logan Landers to talk about it first with our world-famous slide deck. And I would just like to remind everybody that this game is coming up this Saturday, right, guys?
Yep, this Saturday.
Yes, sir.
What time?
12 noon.
12 noon. All right. Well, Mr. Landers, please tell us what's going on with the Georgia Bulldogs and the Kentucky Wildcats.
Let's do it. So this game, like we said, is coming on this Saturday, Halloween at noon. And I'm just be real. It is going to be a nightmare for Kentucky against this Bulldogs team. And I say that just based off the fact that the Bulldogs, they had a bye week. They were able to recuperate, and they were able to lick their chops after that, pretty horrific loss to Alabama, which, look, every season you go into it between the Bulldogs and the Crimson Tide, you always think the Bulldogs might have the upper hand. This might be the year, but the Crimson Tide just always bring them back down to earth, and that's exactly what happened a couple of weeks ago. So coming off the bye week, they're going to be facing off against a Kentucky team that is just looking at wits' end at the moment. They had a pretty bad loss this past week against the Missouri Tigers. They lost 20-10, and they were not able to get anything going offensively or in terms of times of possession. Mr. Football, I got to say this. The time of possession between the Missouri Tigers and the Kentucky Wildcats, it's pretty outstanding, and one of the numbers that you just got to look at and just it's pretty hard to believe. Missouri was able to hold on to the ball for 43 minutes throughout this game versus Kentucky, while Kentucky only had the ball for 16 minutes throughout all four quarters. So if Kentucky wants to make this game even close, even at a chance of an upset, they have to be able to hold on to the ball a lot more, because if only hold on to the ball for under 20 minutes, will not get it done. Their quarterback situation has been a little bit shaky this season with Terry Wilson, of course, and he's just, I don't know. We knew going into this year that they are not, one of the most offensively minded teams. Terry Wilson and Joey Gatewood's kind of like their 1-2 combo, but they're not the prototypical quarterbacks. They're not going to throw the ball all around the place. Looking at the stats against Missouri, Wilson only threw the ball for 35 yards. He did have a touchdown, but on only 3 of 9 passing. And as for Gatewood, he went 1 of 4 with 12 yards. They're very dependent on their running game and their defense. Chris Rodriguez ran for 48 yards, and Asim Rose ran for 43. And they got to get their defense in check if they want to get close against this Georgia team. They gave up 20 points to Missouri, and they are 2-3 on the season, so they are doing pretty solid. But they have to play flawless football against the Bulldogs if they want to think about getting this win. They got to get their time of possession in check. They got to get their quarterbacks. They got to figure out something with the quarterbacks because only thrown for a little bit over 50 yards between 2 of their guys and running the ball for a little bit over 100. That's not going to get it done. They got to do a lot better than that. I don't know what they can do to combat this team because let's face it, the Bulldogs, they are the number 5 team ranked in the country. So they are very dangerous. They have a lot of weapons both on the offensive and the defensive end. And if Kentucky wants to, it's going to be an uphill battle the entire game for the Wildcats. For the Bulldogs, though, let's talk about them just for a second. I'll kick it over to you, Vincent. The Bulldogs, they got, like I said, they got punched in the mouth by Alabama the other week. They got to lick their chops, and they weren't able to get it done against the Crimson Tide. And I think a lot of people thought that if Georgia was able to beat Alabama the other week, then they could be serious contenders for that national championship coming up. But they weren't able to get it done like we've seen over the past couple of years. It's been a good battle between those 2 teams, but it seems like Alabama always has that slight edge against them. And against this game versus Kentucky, I wouldn't take it very lightly because, we see some teams come out after a big loss and they're not themselves. They might not be able to get anything offensively going in the first half like we saw with them against Arkansas a couple weeks ago. They weren't able to get anything going on the offensive side of the ball. And we'll have to see. Their defense has been very solid, though. Their rushing defense has done very well. And they're going to have to really kind of, have that great defense kind of step up against this Kentucky team. But do you feel, Vincent, that Kentucky has a chance in this game? And do you think that Georgia could potentially come out flat in the first half?
Let me say this. You brought up some good points. Now I'm finna go on a magic carpet ride like the great band Lakeside say. I'm going to start with the Georgia Bulldogs. Let's go back 2 weeks ago. They play Alabama on Saturday night, and it was a game that everybody wanted to see how Georgia took that next step in being in the class of elite. And they played the Alabama team that eventually took the Georgia team in the second half to the woodshed. My concern with Georgia, and they had an off week last week, is let's put the question out there. In big games against elite teams, can they win with Stetson Bennett under the center? Well, against Alabama, 18 of 40, 3 INTs, a very critical interception after Alabama had took the lead 24-20 in the third quarter, threw a very bad pass down on the goal line. Then he had 5 passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. My thinking is this. Where's JT Daniels? Is he getting reps this past week? Where's DeJuan Mathis? Because let's put it out there. Can Georgia beat the elite teams right now? Clemson, Ohio State, in Alabama with Stetson Bennett under the center. Number 2, where's the offensive prowess? In the first half against Alabama, Todd Monkey, I'm putting you on board today. I'm putting you out there. I'm putting your business all over the place. Hey, there was no explosive plays against Alabama except that one that went to Mr. James Cook. But where's George Pickens? This year, George Pickens is a 5-star receiver, highly recruited when he came out of high school 2 years ago. Where is he not getting the ball? He only had 3 targets against Alabama. On the season, 13 receptions, 140 yards. He's your best player on the outside. Now let's go over and switch over. In the Alabama game, Devontae Smith had 11 receptions, I believe, for 164 yards. Kudos to Jalen Waddle. He had over 100-some yards. He won't be playing no more. He got hurt in the Tennessee game this week. A big blow for Alabama. But my question is, where is Georgia going to take that next step offensively? And against Alabama, it proved to me, can they win with Stetson Bennett under the center? And the question to me is no. Eventually, they're going to have to figure out a way if JT Daniels is ready. It's just simple as that. And get some rest for DeJuan Mathis. Because you cannot play. It's like taking a Lamborghini and playing against a Cadillac. That's not going to happen. Now, defensively with Georgia this past week, coming into the Alabama game, this was the key. I thought Georgia could beat Alabama because I thought Georgia's defense was elite. Mm-hmm. Well, the answer is that 3 answers. No. Mac Jones, over 400-some yards. And I really thought Georgia had stepped up on the perimeter. I thought they had NFL corners. Well, you saw what happened against Alabama. They could not cover the receivers. And this is another key. Their pass rush was inconsistent. So my thinking, what did Georgia do defensively this past week? I want to see is Adam Anderson going to take it to another level. Is Mr. Larry going to take it to another level? Is Jalen Carter going to get some reps? Is my man Trayvon Walker? They are the 4 best pass rushes Georgia has. Let's be real. Georgia, the remainder of the schedule, they can beat these teams playing, I want to say fool's football, because you can look good against the Kentucky because your talent level was so much better because you had the top recruiting class was ranked number 1 in the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. But I'm going a step further. Is you ready to go against the Clemson, the Alabamas, and Ohio States of the world? The answer, again, is no. And the defense really surprised me, and especially on the perimeter. So I'm trying to see how Georgia's going to play defensively from here on out. Now I'm going to get over to Kentucky. This is a very good Kentucky team. Remember 2 weeks ago, they went up to Knoxville and beat Tennessee very easy, 34-7. This is a defensive team led by Mark Stoops that is very good. You mixing the time of possession against Missouri last week. Mm-hmm. Missouri had 43 minutes?
Yeah,
I think Kentucky had 16 minutes. I think Missouri ran 92 plays. Mm-hmm. Well, think about this. I gained a lot more respect for Kentucky's defense because they only gave up 20 points. Yeah. Granted, Missouri rushed for over 220 yards, but Missouri had to rush it 62 times, and they only averaged 3.8 yards a carry. That defense could have easily packed in, and the game could have got a lot worse. Now I'm going to talk about the offense. Kentucky is battling a situation that I see so many teams in this pandemic season is battling at the quarterback position. You don't know who is better under the center. It's very simple to me. You're not going to win on any level if your quarterback does not play well. Tennessee, I'm talking. Auburn, I'm talking. I'm not putting nobody names out there, but I'm just saying this. Terry Wilson and Joey Gatewood, Kentucky is going to have to get better play for one of those two people. Terry Wilson has not played well. If I was Kentucky, Mark Stoops, I would make the decision today and go with Joey Gatewood to transfer from Auburn. I think that's going to be the biggest key for Kentucky from an offensive standpoint. And one thing that's really hurting this Kentucky football team, they line coach that's been there with them 7 years, Mr. John Sherman, is fighting liver cancer. And that has really taken a toll on a very good Kentucky offensive line. They got good players, man. Mr. Logan Young, Mr. Drake. I'm trying to get the gentleman's name right. I don't want to pronounce it wrong. Yes, Mr. Drake Jackson and Logan Young. They are very good NFL type players. But Mr. Sherman is fought cancer during the season, couldn't even make the trip to Missouri. So that's a big haul on the football team when you got an offensive coach that's really ingrained with them young men. It's been like a father figure. So I'm not going to really knock Kentucky's offense because that's something hard to do during the season. So to me, that's why Kentucky's been a lot of really inconsistent, and Kentucky's strength is running the football. But getting back to the quarterback position, I'm going with Joey Gatewood. That being said, I like Kentucky's defense, though. Think about this. They had 6 interceptions 2 weeks ago against Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
They had 3 interceptions against Kentucky last week, 2 pick sixes. They got some players. They got a young man from Woodland High School, Stone Mountain, Georgia, named Rufus Corker. A lot of people don't know he's from this metro area, Atlanta, where we broadcast. Last week against Missouri, 18 tackles, 2 tackles for losses in a sack. And he's going against a state school that didn't recruit him. So you know he's got to be, we say, chopping at the mouth. He won't do. They got a good player, Jamari Davis at linebacker. Another good corner that transferred from LSU, and Kevin Joseph. They got a real outstanding offensive lineman, the D lineman, that's pretty good, by the name of Mr. Pascal. This is a very sound Kentucky team. I want people to understand they're going to come and they're going to play hard and they're going to play grind on both sides of the ball. But Georgia should win the football game. But as I mentioned in my previous conversation a few seconds ago, what is Georgia going to do offensively? Are they going to get more creative? I want to see explosive plays. I want them to get their star receiver, George Pickens, involved more in the offense. I want you to be more balanced. But it's up to can Georgia going forward. Now, I think with the main of the schedule, I think Stetson Bennett, I don't mean to kill him today, the guy from the 912, but at the end of the day, when you look at what happened in that Alabama game, Georgia, as we say from the 901, he got exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to look at the Georgia's defense. I really thought in the Alabama game that Georgia defense was elite. I thought that really on the perimeter that they secondary could cover Alabama. Well, let's be real here today. They should have a good game against Kentucky because Kentucky is not a passing team. But moving forward, I want to see what Georgia's defense is going to do against them Gators. I want to see where they're going to take that game to another level. Because if Georgia's going to win the national championship, and I'm going to put it out there today, there's 2 critical points going forward. Can you win with Stetson Bennett under the sun? My question to that, my answer to that is no. I think you're going to have to go with the young man from USC, JT Daniels. This is a guy that started as a true freshman at a school by the name of USC that's had great players. I think Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Carson Palmer, O.J. Simpson, Ronnie Lott, Dennis Smith, that's won several national championships. This young man, JT Daniels, started as a true freshman. The only reason he lost his job because of an injury. So moving forward, the Dogs are going to have to fix that problem right there. And number 2, Todd Monkey, the offensive coordinator at Georgia. You was in the NFL. Just last year, you was with the Cleveland Browns and had Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. You come back here, and all of a sudden, you can't get your best player, the young man from Hoover, Alabama, George Pickens, involved in the offense, and he only got 13 receptions on the year? Come on, man. Just to prove my point, I'm going to go down there to LSU. We know what the problem's been down with LSU, right? I'm going to go with this receiver who I think is the best receiver in the country right now, Terrence Marshall. Terrence Marshall is played with 2 different quarterbacks already. Miles Brennan was out with an injury. He played with a true freshman last week by the name of T.J. Finley on Saturday night against South Carolina. But some way, Steve Ensminger, the offensive coordinator at LSU, has found out ways to get Mr. Marshall the ball. Mr. Marshall, 27 receptions, 513 yards, averaging 19 yards a pop, and he's got 9 touchdowns. And LSU is 2-3. So explain to me, the Dogs, your offense, and you got running backs.
Yeah.
And defensively, the main question, I'm not saying the Dogs are elite anymore. Before the Alabama game, I was comparing them to the great Junkyard Dogs of 1976 against Alabama. No way. They took a step down. And right now, when you look at the college football landscape, Mr. Logan, Landers, after watching college football over the last 4 weeks, is only maybe 3 teams that's above everybody else. That's Alabama with Mac Jones, who I think is the best player in the country right now. If I had to vote for the Heisman Trophy, he would be my guy. We know what they got up at Clemson. We call him Sunshine here on 100 Yards of Football. The young man from Collinsville, Georgia, Trevor Lawrence. And I'm going to say this. This team struggled a little bit defensively. They gave up some yards against Nebraska. But let me tell you something. The young man from Harrison High School that was at Georgia 2 years ago, he made a statement on Saturday afternoon against Nebraska. And I'm going to call him the man, Mr. Justin Fields, 20 of 21, 276 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So moving forward, those are the things I want to see the Dogs do against Kentucky. But Kentucky is going to be ready to play. They're playing in Lexington. It's a 12 o'clock game. Mark Stoops is a very good football coach, and Kentucky has a great defense that can play with anybody in the conference. Mm-hmm. If you don't believe me, go back to Mississippi State and JT Costello. We know he put 623 on LSU. This is the defense that had 6 picks against him. Yep. Then going back 2 weeks ago against Tennessee, all you Tennessee fans, including myself, saw what their defense do. They had 2 pick sixes, in the second quarter. So, Georgia, it's your time to prove to me, Mr. Football, Vincent Turner, here on 100 Yards of Football, are y'all elite to be in that category, as I just mentioned, of Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State?
Yeah, you touched on, I think, every subject there we could have possibly talked about. I think that, especially with this game coming up against the Wildcats, Georgia's really got to get George Pickens involved. This is the perfect game to do so. You're not facing a top-tier team. Like I say, you're facing a great defense, but if you ever, like you said, if you wanted to try out some plays to get Pickens open or anything along those lines, this is the game to do it. Because let's just face it here. Georgia does have the star talent over Kentucky. They they just have better players. That's just how it is sometimes. But they gotta get Pickens going. They also got to figure out Zamir White, because he's underperformed a little bit this season. He hasn't done what we thought he was going to do. That's the one thing that we always talk about when we do these game previews is, can Zamir White get something going? And it hasn't been working so far this season. He's run for under 300 yards this year. And like you said, that Kentucky defense is very solid. If they got to get something figured out with those 2 guys in the offensive end. Like you brought up a good point also. Where's JT Daniels? Is his ACL injury still lingering him? We don't know how serious it is. It seems like every week it changes. It seems like he might play this week, but then it's like, oh, well, he's going to be out for another 2 weeks. Will he even take the field this year? We saw what DeJuan Mathis did in that first, a couple of weeks in the opening game, and they took him out as quick as they could to put in Stetson Bennett. And while Bennett has been very, he's been all right coming in for the Bulldogs in a year that he didn't even think he was going to play because of Jamie Newman, who came in but decided to opt out. He has been very good, and he has, opened a few eyes. But is he one of those guys that can go up against the Alabama and the Clemsons and the Ohio States of the world, like you've mentioned? I don't think so. He is a very solid quarterback for what he's done this year. He'll be good against Kentucky, I think, but I don't think you can trust him against some of those bigger name guys. He's not anywhere close to that conversation, like you said, with the Trevor Lawrences, with the KJ Costellos, even, who had that 623-yard performance. With Justin Fields too. A lot of those Georgia fans are wishing they had Justin Fields back right now during this situation. They're wishing that they had him on their sidelines instead of over at OSU. But like I said, the key to this game, if Georgia wants to win, they just got to play a solid game, do what they've always done. They've won 10 in a row against the Wildcats, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. They got to figure out their offense. They got to get George Pickens. They got to get Zamir White going. Stetson Bennett needs to have a solid bounce-back game. They got to get their defense figured out. Especially those corners, like you said. Those corners got to get something working out because they got embarrassed against Alabama. That's pretty easy to say. But for Kentucky, if they want to even have a chance in this game, they have to play absolutely perfect. They have to get turnovers. Like you said, they had those 6 against KJ Costello and that Mississippi State team a couple weeks ago. So they got to really play some tight defense. They got to get some turnovers. They have to limit their amount of turnovers. And they just got to be all around on the field, hugging all those receivers, hugging on the Pickens and everyone else on that Georgia offense. and they might have a chance, but I got the Bulldogs getting the win in this one. I'm not going to say a score because usually I'm not the best at that, but I will say I will guarantee this is the stamp of approval, the Logan Lander stamp of approval, that the Georgia Bulldogs will get the win this Saturday on Halloween. Mr. Football, what's your final thoughts on the game?
Well, first of all, I want to say I apologize, Mr. KJ Costello of Mississippi State. This is why I look at the Georgia Bulldogs team right now. And to the Georgia fan base, you talking about you want to be elite. You had 3 top highly recruiting classes. You got NFL talent all on your roster. At the quarterback position, to me, that's the most critical position where you got to take the next step. And it proved that in the Alabama game. I'm not saying you can't win with Stetson Bennett and you can't go undefeated with the rest of your conference schedule. But my thing is this. Can you beat the Alabamas? Can you beat the Ohio States? Can you beat the Clemsons? But I'm going to go back. And I think about Georgia in this way. And I got a lot of good friends who are Georgia Bulldogs fans. And I'm going to say this today, the Bulldogs Nation. I remember this song that came out in 1970 when I was 10 years old. And it made me get up and just stomp my feet and clap my hands. So it was by this young man out of San Francisco, California. And he had a band called Sly and the Family Stone. And he had a song, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself. So this is to the Georgia fan base. Looking at the devil, grinning at his gun. The Dogs offense. You better get ready for the rest of the season because you say you are elite. And can you roll with Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State? My prediction for the game this Saturday, the Dogs should bounce back. I'm saying 27-10, but it's going to be a tough football game. And thank you today for being on 100 Yards of Football with Mr. Logan Landers and my man Jeremiah Daniel Long. Thank you for letting me be myself. The Dogs offense, you better step up. By the great Sly and the Family Stone said in 1970.
What they say?
Thank you for letting me be myself. Looking at the devil, grinning at his gun. You dogs, you better get ready because you say you are elite. Well, you better start.
Absolutely. Well, you've been watching 100 Yards of Football, Sports Talk Radio. Thank you so much to host Vincent Turner and Logan Landers for joining us. And make sure that you go over to your podcast network, wherever you listen, and look up 100 Yards of Football and check out our podcast. We have amazing shows coming out every single week. Make sure you subscribe. We do Legends videos, game previews, interviews with some of the most legendary players and coaches. Plus, we give you perspectives with all of the great sportscasters from around the country where we bring in those people as guests so we can hear their perspectives on some of the niche different teams that maybe you don't get to hear that much about, or maybe you do get to hear more about, but you want to get a different perspective. And we keep it on the field here. It's one of the most important things is we like to talk about stats. We like to talk about players. So thank you so much for watching. And for the whole team here at 100 Yards of Football, we'll see you a little later.
God bless.